Everyone always talks about what rich people do. Nobody talks about what they stop doing. It's a Tuesday morning. You're on your way to work. You stop at the same coffee spot you always stop at, tap your card, scroll your phone, clock in. And by the time Friday rolls around, you've worked 40 hours and somehow have less than you started with. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. Let's talk about you for a second. You're probably earning something. Maybe it's decent, maybe it's not enough, but there's money coming in. You pay your rent or your contribution at home, you handle your phone bill, your data, your transportation, you eat, you go out sometimes, you send money to family when someone needs it, and somewhere in the middle of all of that, you're trying to save. You genuinely are. You set aside a little here and there. You tell yourself this month will be different, but by the 25th, the account looks exactly how it always looks, maybe a little worse. You're not spending on anything ridiculous, nothing dramatic, just the regular cost of existing, and still, nothing is building. Here's where most people get stuck. You've tried cutting back, you've done the budgets, you've tracked expenses for 2 weeks before getting tired of it, you've promised yourself you'll be more careful, and you are more careful for a while. Then something comes up, it always comes up, and you're right back where you started. The frustration isn't the spending. The frustration is that you're putting in real effort and getting almost nothing back for it. You feel like you're running, but the ground isn't moving. That feeling is important because it's telling you something isn't right, not about your discipline, about the direction. Here's the shift. Most people in their 20s are trying to save their way to security. Cut this, avoid that, spend less here. And those things matter, but saving alone is not a strategy, it's a holding pattern. The people who actually build something aren't just spending less, they're making their money work while they sleep. That's not a motivational phrase, that's a structural difference. The question isn't just how much are you keeping, it's what is the money you're keeping actually doing? Let's start with the first thing most people get completely wrong, the idea that you need a lot of money to start investing. Most people treat investing like it's something that comes after you've figured everything else out, like there's a threshold you have to cross first, a number you have to hit, and until you hit it, you wait. But that waiting is the mistake. Because the way compounding works, the time you put in early matters more than the amount. $2,000 invested at 22 does more work than $10,000 invested at 32. Not because of anything mysterious, because of time. Because returns build on returns, and the longer that cycle runs, the harder it becomes to catch up if you haven't started. The money doesn't care if it's small at the start, it just needs a start. There's a story worth telling here. Not someone famous, just a regular person. Someone who worked at a mid-level job, nothing extraordinary, had a colleague who kept mentioning a simple investment account, nothing complex, just an index fund, a fund that tracks the overall market rather than picking individual stocks. The colleague had been putting in small amounts every month, not life-changing amounts, the equivalent of skipping a few things here and there. After a few years, this colleague casually mentioned what the account had grown to. Not a fortune, but noticeably more than what had been put in. That contrast between sitting still and quietly growing was the thing that landed. So you start paying attention. You begin reading, not obsessively, but consistently. You come across terms you didn't know: index funds, ETFs, compound interest, risk tolerance, diversification. At first, it feels like a different language, but then it clicks, slowly, the way things click when you're genuinely curious. You start to understand that investing isn't this single thing. It's a set of decisions made over time that determine how your money behaves. You're not ready to do anything yet. You're just building a map. Then comes the first move. You find a platform, something straightforward. You look at the minimum deposit required. It's less than you expected. There's a moment of hesitation, the familiar voice that says, "This is too small to matter. What's the point?" You do it anyway.
You put in a modest amount, the kind of amount that feels almost embarrassing to mention, and you pick something simple, a broad market index fund. The thinking is straightforward. Instead of betting on one company, you're betting on the overall economy. You're not trying to be clever, you're trying to be patient. Now here's the part nobody really prepares you for. There's a period after you invest where nothing dramatic happens. The number goes up slightly, the number goes down slightly. Some week you check and it's lower than when you start it. That's uncomfortable. It's real money, and for a moment you wonder if this was wise. But you understood going in that short-term movement is noise. The long game is what you're playing. You leave it alone. That decision to leave it alone, that's not passive, that's discipline. Months pass. You've been adding small amounts regularly. Not every month is the same. Some months life gets in the way and you contribute less. One month you contribute nothing, but you don't stop. You come back the next month. After 8 months, the account is showing something meaningful. Not enough to change your life, but enough to make the concept real. You didn't have this money before. Now you do, and it grew slightly beyond what you put in. That's not exciting by itself, but it's proof, and proof matters more than motivation. At this point, you also realize something nobody told you. Building anything comes with ongoing work. An investment is simpler than most, but you still have to make decisions when the market drops. You have to resist the impulse to sell when everything looks bad. You have to not panic when you read a bad headline. These aren't catastrophes, they're the job. Everyone who builds wealth quietly deals with these moments. They just don't talk about them, so it looks like the growth happened without any friction. It didn't. It never does. Let's jump ahead. 18 months from the first deposit. The account has grown, not dramatically, but steadily. The contributions have added up. The returns have started compounding, returns generating their own returns. The gap between what you've put in and what now exists is starting to widen slightly in your favor. Your savings, which used to sit flat in an account doing nothing, are now split, some liquid, some working. You're not wealthy, but you are, for the first time, building. This is where the second principle comes in. Growth doesn't happen at a constant rate, it accelerates. The first year is the slowest. The returns are small because the base is small. But as the base grows, the same percentage return produces a larger number. This is why people who start early end up so far ahead. It's not that they're smarter, it's that their money has been running longer. The compounding curve bends upward over time, and the early years, the boring, invisible, seemingly pointless years, are what create that bend. The difference between starting at 22 and starting at 32 isn't 10 years, it's potentially decades of compounding advantage. Now something else changes. You look at the returns the investment has produced over the past year, and instead of withdrawing them, you let them stay in, reinvest them, let them compound on top of the previous compounding. This is the quiet mechanism behind most real wealth. Not a dramatic event, not a lucky break, just a decision to keep letting the cycle run. You also start thinking about a second position, something slightly different from the first. You do more analysis. You understand now that diversification isn't just spreading money around randomly. It's managing exposure, making sure one bad outcome doesn't erase everything. Something has shifted in how you think. It's not about the account balance exactly. It's more subtle than that. You've stopped seeing money as something you either have or don't have. You've started seeing it as something that can be structured, arranged, directed. You make fewer impulsive purchases, not because you're being strict with yourself, but because you've started asking a different question. Not, can I afford this, but what is this money doing if I keep it? That shift in thinking is quieter than any number in an account, but it's the most important thing that's changed. A year and a half later, you're in a position to look at something larger. A friend mentions an opportunity in a sector you've been watching. This one requires more capital and more research. You don't rush into it. You spend 3 weeks studying it. You look at the downside first. What happens if this goes wrong? You're not trying to get rich quickly. You're trying to make a sound decision. You commit to a position. It's the biggest financial move you've ever made, and you're more prepared for it than anything you've ever been for like it. Here's the third principle. At a certain point, the rules change. When your money is small, your focus is on selecting good assets and staying consistent. But as the amounts grow, the game becomes about structure, tax efficiency, asset allocation, understanding how different types of accounts and vehicles work together. It's the difference between individual effort and building a system. Individual effort has a ceiling. A system properly built does not. This is why the wealthy don't just have more money, they have more layers between them and the work of managing it. The goal isn't to work harder on your money, it's to build something that works without you. Now let's talk about the numbers because they're worth saying clearly. After a few years of consistent, modest investing, starting with amounts that seemed too small
To matter, the total picture has changed significantly. The original contributions would not have produced this outcome on their own. The compounding difference, the reinvested gains, the additional positions, together they've created a gap between what was put in and what now exists. Total investment value, total monthly passive income beginning to emerge, total savings rate now meaningfully higher than where it started. These numbers are not dramatic if you say them fast. They're very different if you compare them to doing nothing. You don't talk about this much. There's no particular reason to announce it. The people around you are still having the same conversations about the same frustrations. You're not superior to them. You were in the exact same place not long ago. You just made a different set of decisions, quietly, consistently, without waiting for permission or the perfect moment. Over time, the thinking deepens further. You start thinking about tax-advantaged accounts, about the difference between growth and value strategies, about position sizing, about when to hold and when to step back. These are not beginner questions. You didn't start here, but you arrived here because you started somewhere. The beginning was small. The questions were basic. The amounts were almost embarrassing. But that's what the beginning looks like. It's supposed to be small. Here's where this lands. The poor financial decisions most people make in their 20s aren't dramatic. They're not reckless purchases or gambling or obvious mistakes. They're quieter than that. They're waiting. They're assuming there's a threshold to cross before starting. They're treating today's small amount as not worth the effort. The cost isn't the coffee or the impulse buy. The cost is the years of compounding that don't happen. What separates the people who build something from the people who don't isn't income most of the time. It's not even intelligence. It's the willingness to start with something small, understand what they're doing, and let time do the heavy lifting. Not success, understanding. That's what changes everything.